Hi, I'm Alex Ubias. Not every disaster resource center has a dormitory, but when we do, it's one of the most important and one of the most sensitive services we can provide. And there's lots to know about how these dormitories operate. So today, we'll hear from some of the region's top experts in managing shelter spaces. Jennifer Masoja of Multnomah County Human Services has been working with and finding temporary housing for diverse populations for the last 4 years. Sarah Ekman from Clackamas County Disaster Management has 12 years of experience in managing shelters in emergencies. And Curtis Peets comes to us from American Red Cross, our most frequent community partner in providing emergency shelter space when people are displaced from their homes. Don't forget, this is part of a series all about operating disaster resource centers. And we have lots of other topics you're welcome to check out. Okay, let's hear from our sheltering experts.
Hi, I'm Jen Masoja, and welcome to my office. I'm here to help you feel as confident as possible managing dormitories at a disaster resource center in an emergency. You probably know that a disaster resource center may or may not have a dormitory or sheltering function. It just depends on the size and scope of the disaster response. That's why we don't simply refer to DRCs as shelters. They have lots of other functions and sometimes don't have a dormitory function at all.
Hi, I'm Sarah Ekman. Welcome to my office at the Clackamas County EOC. When there's indication that a dormitory will be needed at a DRC, it's important to figure out where people can stay overnight. And then, once we establish a dormitory function, there are some specific tips and guidelines I'd like to share about how we operate the dormitory. If you've seen the segment on our values and guiding principles for operating DRCs, then you already know that we do our best to keep families together. Family is determined by the guest, as is their gender, which will be important in managing dormitories, as you'll see in a bit. We'll also consider guest needs, requests, and privacy concerns, and we try to meet those needs with the space available. We reserve sleeping areas for dormitory residents. People who aren't planning on sleeping there aren't allowed access, and separate dormitory areas can be established for different groups of people based on how many people we're housing.
Hi, I'm Curtis Peets, and welcome to my office at the American Red Cross in North Portland. Regional county governments manage disaster resource centers often very similar to the way the Red Cross does. So I'm here to give you some best practices from our experience doing this work. Here's something that's really important about how we treat our guests who need housing. When someone stays overnight, that space is their home at the time. They're not in their home, and this is the temporary replacement we have. Once we assign someone a place in the dorm, we expect that our staff will treat the space with dignity and respect. For example, there are no doors, so let's make every effort to act as if there were doors. I never just go and sit down on someone's cot and enter their space without being invited. Sometimes I like to say knock knock when I approach someone's sleeping space, just to show that I'm treating their space as theirs. We mentioned that guests select their own sleeping areas. That means they choose whether to stay with their families or whether they stay in a gender-neutral area, as well as what their access needs are for the space, such as doorways wide enough for their wheelchair. Having said that, we sometimes guide people to stay in certain areas because of their elevated security need, such as custody disputes or domestic violence situations.
It's going to be important to know the roles and responsibilities in managing dormitory areas. First, let's look at managing the sleeping areas themselves. If the population is large enough, the DRC leadership might create special sleeping areas for families, single women, and single men, a gender-neutral area, a day sleeping area, or a place for people with pets. You'll also need to be thinking about cultural and religious needs and the best way to work with residents to figure out how to meet those needs. Some guests might need outlets for important medical equipment, and people with disabilities may have input about the placement of their cots. We have more information about older adults and people with disabilities in another segment.
So you may be asked to help set up a dormitory area as part of your work in the DRC. And there are just a few things I'd like you to know about. We always set up the dormitory so that we can maintain safety. That means organizing the space with emergency exits and fire lanes in mind. We also pay attention to access points like bathrooms and stairwells. We also just try to make things easy for people and easy for ourselves when we have to do nightly head counts. For example, I like to arrange the cots in a row so it's easy to tell someone you're in the third cot in row C. We always set up a sign-in and sign-out table at the entrance to the dormitory area so that we can make sure that only dormitory guests are in the dormitory space. One thing we look at is hidden corners or secluded areas in the DRC. If you have areas that people can't see into very well, you might want to have someone make rounds through that area to make sure the guests are as safe as possible. And if you have any questions about setting up the space, check in with the DRC coordinator. One great way to help meet guests' needs and to get them involved is to create a guest dorm committee for each dormitory area. Any interested guests of that dormitory area can be part of the committee, and they'll determine basic guidelines, such as lights out or cleaning times. They can also help define the rules about sleeping in that space, how they'll handle security of their belongings, and help keep routes through the dormitory area clear and accessible. One thing that's really helpful to guests is for you to maintain a dormitory-specific information board. You might put things there like meal and shower schedules, rules and schedules from the guest dorm committee, and reminders about safety, kindness, and using the buddy system.
Finally, supplies for dormitories might be different in different jurisdictions or other organizations. However, let me tell you about what the Red Cross does. Both we and the counties in the region have several trailers ready to deploy to dormitories with supplies like different sizes of cots, blankets, and supplies for people with access and functional needs. If you don't have something you need, you can always connect with a DRC coordinator to create a resource request, and it's probably available in one of these equipment trailers. Same thing if lots of people are showing up looking for housing, but you don't have a dormitory at your DRC. Look and listen, and when you think you have a need beyond what's available, link with the DRC coordinator.
All right, so that's it for today. We've talked about how to give people private and respected spaces, and sometimes restricted spaces if you need them for people with elevated security needs. We talked about how to get people involved with the management of the dormitory area and how you can get resources as you need them. I hope this gives you a better idea about what operating the dormitory function of a DRC will be like and how you can support people's needs. Don't forget, we have a whole series of training all about operating a DRC, and you're welcome to check out our other topics as well. Thanks for watching.